Welcome to Monday Night Live, the weekly training that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and start building your wealth.
The folks that are on it, we'll go ahead and kick this off. We'll start this. So, Aaron, the folks that are here, some of them are on my team, the Global Investor Agent team, and some are not. They could be here from different brokerages and all over, mostly U.S. Occasionally, we'll get some Canadians, and even folks from overseas, but mostly it's U.S. based. Mostly agents. We do get investors on here too, and probably more than half easily will be part of our team. So now, you want me to? I'll be the checking the chat box. You're going to have access also to the chat. You'll be able to see the questions and everything. But I'll kind of keep an eye out for you so you won't be distracted. Do you want to take questions as we go? You like to save them for certain intervals or at the end, or what's your? Either one's okay with me.
I think it might be better if it's just more interactive. So like I can take them on the fly. So if you see something comes up in the chat, just tell me, and then we can answer the question.
Excellent. Okay, let me do one more pass of the attendees here. Sasha, good to see you. And the rest of these look like they're note takers. Okay, so guys, we'll go ahead and kick this off. Aaron, you should be co-host. You should be able to share your screen. And if you want to fill people in a little bit first about, who you are, and then we can jump right into the subject matter,
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Like Gary was saying, I was lucky enough to be on one of his podcasts. We had a good interaction. We were talking about different types of investing and some of the stuff that we do as a real estate financer or a real estate financing company, what we can do on non-traditional, non-QM, more investment property related things that banks can't get to. And so we discussed a lot of that on the podcast, and that's kind of our niche. That's what we do. So we can do everything soup to nuts, primary homes, vacation homes, secondary homes, but really where we kind of get a lot of market traction is in the niche of commercial property, investment property, and working with those clients that may have a little bit more complexity to their financial package. So we are full service in Texas, Alabama, and Florida. We're headquartered in Florida, and the commercial and investment property part of our portfolio, we can lend in about 38 states. So we have a pretty good, nationwide presence.
Yeah. By the way, if you have any slides, anything like that to show, you're certainly able to welcome to do that.
Yeah, that was one of the things. So I didn't know which way we wanted to go, but we have like a presentation that my marketing team helped me put together. And so it kind of helps your team a little bit. It's kind of like branding versus marketing and the strategy behind them and that kind of thing. If that's something that may be interesting to you guys. If not, then you can play Stump the Chump and ask me lots of financing questions. I don't know, whatever you think is best.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do the branding and marketing, because that's actually a really important lesson, because most people get in real estate they're not marketing, they don't have marketing degrees, or it's not their forte. And we tend to think of it as being one and the same. And it's really not. Once you learn the distinction, it's easier to know how to deploy the technology and what the messaging should be for branding, and also the same thing for marketing. And I think it'll really help a lot. And by the way, there'll be a lot of people on here for sure. We'll have questions on our financing too. So don't be surprised if at the end it tends to pick up as we go along. It'll be quiet at first, and then we'll think everybody's just post-supper mode. But they'll come alive towards the end. It's usually what happens. And everybody's interested in financing now, because we just found out we're not going to get a rate cut. I knew we weren't, but the potential for a rate increase in the near future, you just gotta plan accordingly, So any case, that's kind of a hot topic right now,
Yeah, no, that I love it. And we curated something for your team and your audience, so hopefully they'll get a lot of information out of it. And it'll be something that we'll share at the end. So I'll make sure that we get through Gary so he can send it out to everybody. And and they can have it to refer back to as we kind of go along. In case that way you don't have to take copious notes. You can kind of just interact and chime in and whatever.
Perfect. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Ooh, let's see. Share the screen. It's a little different than. Okay, Gary, I haven't done one of these before. Where do I share this?
If you're are you on a Windows or a Mac?
Matt.
Okay. I don't have a Mac, but there should be, if you hover your mouse around, it should be a green share button.
Oh, I see it at the bottom. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if everybody on this, the participants, if you could turn your cameras on, that'd be great because we see exactly 5 people, 2 of them being Aaron and me, and Connie and Rob Hawk, the other 2, and then 1 more. So if you guys could be kind enough to let us see your beautiful faces, that'd be awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Hey, how you doing, Stephanie? That's good. We got that's a good view. I like the graphics too, Aaron.
All right. So really, if you're ready for me to kind of go through this, there's a lot of slides, and there'll look like there's a bunch of words that are on the page, but we're going to go through it fairly quickly and at a high level. But that way you can kind of get what are the meat and potatoes, or what are the 2 or 3 things I need to take away from it. And it'll help you kind of, just like it says, you want to build trust, you want to differentiate your positioning, and you want to drive that growth in your business, right? And so just like Gary said, you're busy, looking at investment deals, working with clients, looking at your own deals, looking at your own business. You don't have time to be quote unquote content creator as well, right? And that's the way I approach. I said, look, we got to come up with something better than this in terms of like what we were doing internally. And so then we kind of deployed this, and we sandpapered the rough edges off of it, and this is what we got. So, with that, Gary, are you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So there are some key distinctions, right? So when you think of something that is brand versus marketing, there are some things that you want to kind of keep on, one on one side of the ledger and the other on the other. And then hopefully by the end of the presentation, it'll make more sense. So branding, real quickly, in the box, it's, it's the foundation, it's who you are, how you're perceived, and, why do people trust you for what you do? Marketing is just that voice, right? It's just what is the audio, the print, the media, the video that's coming out of, promoting your brand identify, right? So, really, here's some key things as we kind of talk about that ledger: branding versus marketing. And, branding is the why, the marketing is the how, right? Skipping down a little bit, branding is the story, marketing is the tactics to that story. In branding, you're bringing in your values. You're kind of letting your internal purpose and your mission and your core values, and then how is that sprinkled and echoed and communicated through all of your different campaigns, whether it's an email, newsletter, it's the phone calls that you're on, a podcast, all your socials. You want to make sure that everything is consistent. So. I'll stop if there's any. Yeah, just chime in, whenever you want to, if there's a question. So why does it matter? Okay, so here's a few things that are probably, they're not top of mind, but it's, something that you already know, but you think about, right? You're constantly being evaluated. So if you really look in that first box, it's, a lot of times prospects research you ever before they reach out, right? Before they make that phone call. So just think about it. How I'll put it in our terms. So from a lending company, a lot of our referral partners, want to give multiple sources, right? So they'll say, okay, here's 3 of our best contacts, our best lenders. Well, a lot of times they hand that to the client, and the client may research and look, what does your online presence look like? What does your website look like? And they start making their own determination and their kind of opinions before they even reach out to make that call, right? And then once they see that list of 3, they may check all 3. They may check 1 versus 2. They may just have their Chat GPT do it. And it does. There is a little bit of, how you communicate and what's that clarity of message. You are being compared against the other people, either whatever Google pulled up or your Chat GPT pulled up in terms of the search that they did on you and that criteria that they put into that search, or just the three names that are on a note card that your referral source gave to you and said, hey, call these three people. We do that with like insurance and title companies and everybody else. We say, hey, look, here's three that we love to work with that do a great job. They're high value, they're high touch, they're client service oriented. You can always look for more, but if you start with these three, that at least gives you a good baseline to make your decision, right? And so then those three, based on what we just said, they're getting compared. So you kind of think about that, and then they start jockeying in position in their brain, right? And so a lot of this, yes, Aaron, it sounds repetitive, but a lot of it is not always top of mind. Like whether you are creating or you're not creating, whether you have a social presence or you don't have a social presence, all of those things matter, right? So the pro tip at the bottom is you're already building a brand. The only question is whether you are controlling it. And so that's kind of some of the byproduct of what we're talking about, right? So we want to make sure, hey, I want to control some of that. And so through this presentation, there might be some things that even if you write down 2 or 3 things that like, hey, I'm going to check on this or I'm going to implement this, you're already ahead of the ball game than 90% of the other people. Strategic branding, right? So strategic branding is not a logo, even though a lot of people think it is. It's a deliberate, disciplined process of, shaping your business. How is it perceived, remembered, and chosen, right? So what is the perception? Every touch point, like we just talked about. So if you think about it, you could probably think of easily 5 to 7 touch points without me even reading the card. I think about our website. Is our website cohesive to our social media? Is our social media concise to our newsletters? Our newsletter concise to our email signatures? Is our email signatures concise to or comparable to our business cards? Is our business cards comparable to our online presence? What is our videos? Do they match the energy, right? So think about it. I don't know how many of you guys follow sports or not, but there's kind of like these crazy antics in this baseball, like the Savannah Bananas, right? So they're dancing, they have loud colors. It's baseball, but it's more entertainment than baseball, right? So if you were like, hey, I'm a diehard baseball, I want to talk, 1970s, Dodgers versus Yankees in the World Series, then Savannah Bananas may not be for you. But if you lead with that, then people get kind of like confused. Everything I've seen on you so far is like some sort of diehard baseball fan, and then I see more this entertainment, and vice versa, right? So it's kind of like how are you remembered, and does it make sense? And then, how do I become chosen? I ultimately want to be the chosen one, right? So I want my branding to drive. When I was in corporate America, one of the things that one of our mentors and CEOs always talked about is being the driveway decision. When that client or customer is getting in their car, and in this case, if they're getting on their laptop, they're opening their laptop, you want to be that driveway decision. Like, we're going here because we need this, right? Or we want that, right? So we need, I don't know, we need a new box of nails and some lumber. Well, I'm going to Home Depot for that. I'm not going to the grocery store, right? And those kind of things. So, and then the strategic brand is really built on four pillars: your reputation. So, what people say about you when you're not in the room. Expertise, demonstrating authority and deep knowledge in your domain. You want to convey that. You want to make sure that you have that consistency, that's showing up with a nice look and feel across all your channels. That was one of the things we talked about between, your web page all the way down to your email signature and business cards, right? And then what is my value? What is the value prop I'm bringing? Am I bringing you great rates? Okay, then everything should be structured around rates. Am I bringing you great solutions to complex financial questions, then that should be around that, right? So think about in your terms, what are you bringing, and what are you solving for? And that kind of leads us into this positioning, right? So positioning should be the cornerstone, the cornerstone. So you spend a little bit of time thinking about what is my position, right? And it's kind of like, what do you do, right? And what makes you different? There's a lot of people in our world that do what we do, right? So you can Google alone and get a bot and get it from Quicken or somewhere online, SoFi, somebody, right?
Mhm.
You can go to the bank, you can go to the credit union, you can ask your brother-in-law, you can go to, hard money lenders, you can go to family offices, you can go to a lot of different places, right? So it's what do we do? Okay, I'm going to be clear and specific exactly what we do. We really specialize in these things. What makes us different? We're different because we've spent a lot of time curating answers to questions that happen in this space, right? And so
Mhm.
one of the best things, I know you guys have probably already seen it before, but you really should write it out. So when everybody asks, oh, you're at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon, right? Or you're at a networking event and someone goes, what do you do? Right? You could say, I'm a plumber, or I'm a realtor, or I'm a mortgage guy, right? So they don't want to hear mortgage guy because then that seems very vague, dismissive, and so what I tell them is, I help who, right, achieve what result through how we're different. And so it really kind of makes a sharp statement in terms of like, I help investors achieve, successful projects through creative financing. That sounds a lot better than me just saying, well, I'm a mortgage guy, right? So that's kind of how you would want to look at something like that, but it is unique. Um, okay, so we'll get through this, and then I'll ask you guys if you have any questions. You can
Okay.
stop. But so foundations and common mistakes. Before you build, outward visibility, you must build inward clarity, right? And that's kind of like everything, right? So um, I really look at this at a lot of things, right? So even think about um, like if you're going to take on a new hobby project, right? I'm going to build a fence, right? So if I'm going to build a fence and I want it to look good, not just like, three boards, just slapped up there, then I'm going to say, okay, what are my capabilities? What does my toolbox look like? What is my access to, solutions? And then I'm going to put that together and I know I can build a great fence, right? Or I have a strong foundation, you know, to guide what my, business decisions make, right? So I need my mission, right? So what does my business do? Why does it exist? My vision, like where are we going? Like what does success look like in 3, 5, 10 years? And a lot of books that you read, even from like Traction to 10x is simpler than 2x, they all have like this thing, like you really need to understand where you want to go and start thinking in the terms of that destination, which makes your current decisions towards that destination, right? And then you may start today and say, okay, my 3-year plan. So in 2029, I want to be here. In 2031, I want to be here, right? So that's a 3-5 plan. But then by next year, it may have changed, which is okay, but you're still keeping that consistency. Okay, my 2031 plan was this, but now we're 1 year into it. My new 3-year plan for 2032, is this, right? Those kind of things. So, and then values. So really your brand needs to be clear beliefs with clear positioning and clear standards, what you will and will not stand for. Where will we position and not position our firm? What do we or do not believe in, right? And so um, the boxes on the right is really where a lot of people fall into traps and stuff. Is don't be too broad, don't be too vague, and don't be inconsistent, right? So let's talk about too broad. I'm I'm all exclusive. I mean, I'm all inclusive. I do every single transaction that's out there, right? I make sure that we handle everything from down payment assistance and bad credit to large layer cake deals on commercial sites, right? Well, there's a lot that's in that, and you can't really be the best at all those things, right? And the same thing with like too vague, right? I'm full service, right? So you don't want your caption on your LinkedIn banner or your social media banner at the bottom of your email. We're a full service brokerage. Now, I kind of contradict myself because when I lead, when people ask me, where are you guys located? Where do you do deals? I did say that at the beginning. I said we're full service in Texas, Alabama, and Florida. And I do that to kind of quicken the answer when I can say, then we do these things in all these other states. I'm trying to do a little bit of delineation between the two, but I need to learn from my own slide that, hey, full service doesn't really make sense, right? Just say, what we do sharply, we do primary, secondary vacation, um, you know, in these states, and then we do commercial and investment in the rest of the country, those kind of things. And then that keeps me from being too vague. And then inconsistent. So we see this a lot. And it's even in our own world. So where you may get like a burst, like you've had 3 espressos, they're all red eye shots, and a chocolate donut, and you're ramped up on Saturday morning, and you create 15 posts, right? And you schedule them out for the next week, right? I'm going to do 2 on this day, 3 on this day, and so on and so forth. Well, then what happens at the end of that? Did I now create or do a shift in what my perception that my community looks towards me? Did I make that now askew because now they're expecting to see all of these or not see all of these? Or did I just flood them with a ton, and then I don't come back to them until I get that inspiration again, which may be 2 or 3 weeks, and in that time there was nothing done, right? So just that inconsistent messaging. Or if I talk a ton about a certain topic, right? Like let's say, hey, there's a great deal on short-term rentals now. Let's talk about short-term rentals. Here's the market analysis. Here's the new data. Here's where investors are really making money. And then I do that for 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, right? And so I'm really starting to make an impact. I get a little bit of a following. I get some people asking me questions on it. And then on Monday, I start talking about, no, now this week we're going to talk about new construction. So we're going to talk about new construction for, NFL players in their rookie deal. And that's how niche we're going to get. So then you see what I'm saying? So then it becomes, you're not inconsistent in the frequency of how much you're touching someone, but your message is messed up. So those are some things. So before we kind of get going, is there any questions, or is this a good pace for y'all, or is it stuff that y'all are understanding?
Yeah, I mean, so far it's right up our alley, guys. If you do have questions, you go ahead and type in them. And Kieran is a guest, and he's an investor, and he's got a couple of questions like um, about is there other networks? And Kieran, there definitely are, but also is an investor, Kieran, you actually kind of need to think like a business person would, in this case, a real estate agent. That's why so many of us started off investing and got our license, because we realized we're trying to position ourselves in front of the sellers. We want to convince the sellers to sell their house to us as
Right.
investors. And if we're not buying it, we want to help other people buy it and get another stream of income going. Um, so I would definitely this I can tell you for a fact this is definitely applicable to investors too, because you're not typically doing things traditionally. And as a result, you got to think of yourself as you got to feel, think, and speak like a business person. And these strategies and these principles are extremely important. You can't just have a great idea on creative purchasing You've got to show up in a way that people will turn their head and pay attention to you and have a message that they'll listen to. It even comes down to what you wear, stuff like that. And I mean, seriously, as an investor, you might think, why? Well, you'll find out. If you practice this, you'll find yourself doing better as an investor too.
Right.
Just,
And
mhm,
just to dovetail on that, a lot of times people on our side want to see, especially in certain types of, if the deals are a little bit more complex, or even if they're not complex, right? There'll be a client that'll come to us and say, "Hey, we have an investor that wants to do this project, right? They want to buy this little quadplex or this duplex, and then the marketability and the branding of that investor is important to ultimately which either family office, private equity group, wholesale lending, or a bank that we use to lend your client money, right? So they want to see
mhm,
what's your past experience, how do you position yourself, did those exit well, and if you can put everything in a nice package, and that this kind of really dovetails into that. So
mhm,
so visibility and first impression, right? So it is the prerequisite for growth. So when you reach out to someone, then you're kind of opening yourself up, because it's very easy for them to look you up, to look up your website, your LinkedIn, your reviews. We get a lot of people that are looking at our reviews. We get a lot of people that say, "Hey, the reason we chose you is because of your reviews." And really, a lot of that just starts from our very first conversation with a client, right? So
mhm,
I'm always thinking in game, in game. What do I want? I want to build two things. One, a partnership with this client. I'm not transactional. No one on our team believes that we're transactional. We believe in partnerships, right? Because partnerships still run the day in these kind of emotionally driven, high investment and requirement transactions, right? And so then the other thing is, so that's number one, is we're trying to build a partnership with this person and their clients, right? And then the second thing
mhm,
is, you know, our greatest marketing is no better than our best reviews, right? Like we've done videos and YouTubes, and they're really great and they're super informational. But really, if someone reads our reviews and or gets a personal referral to use us, our success rate is so much higher than if they just looked on our website, read about us, and then watched some of our videos, right? So that those two things I have in mind from the very first conversation that I have with clients and realtors. So that's just internally us, right? So
mhm.
so what you do, who you help, like it should be reflected in your messaging, right? So you know, we're for you. We're here for you. We're the best for you, and then that's why they ultimately start to trust you, which is number three. And then the golden rule on this slide is, if a prospect and or client referral, what have you, has to guess what you do, who you serve, or where, why should I even listen to this person? We've already lost them, right?
Yeah.
So clean, crisp, clear, clarity converts, any kind of confusion, long answers, not answering the question, not listening. So that's one of the things I pound into our team too, is listen first. Listen two times as much as you talk. No one wants to be sold to, but they want to be listened to. So tell me, what is your project? And then listen. They'll tell you all the data you need. You don't have to sell them on
Mhm.
why you're the best. A lot of the times, just because you're just listening to them, and then you're answering their questions in a more conversational method. And you already know from your expertise and your arsenal and all of the resources and opportunities that you've curated, that you're going to help them. So you don't really have to sell it to them, is so to speak. All right. So this is another big one. We talked about in the first, second, or third slide about um, perception. Is a lot of these topics are, yeah, I get that. Oh yeah, that makes sense. But that's not always top of mind every time you sit down, right? So
Mhm.
really, there is a lot of studies that are on color and visual identity. And so we'll just kind of we'll kind of go through these, because people will pick up on it really quickly. What kind of industry you're in, where you are vertically in that industry, what you're trying to do. I'm trying to inform you. I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to get you in my sales funnel. I'm trying to get a call to action. I'm trying to close you, even though I've never met you, right? So a lot of those come out in just the first 2 seconds if they look at your color, your topography, you know, everything from font, word selection, all of those things. So really what we kind of look at is, and when you kind of frame like, it could be something as subtle as what color should my call to action button should be. And trust me, I have gone through meeting after meeting after meeting with marketing, our web design team, myself walking around. I don't know what color should a call to action, and so this kind of helps you, right? So if it's blue, that's kind of trust and professionalism. It's used in our industry, right? Finance, technology. You see a lot of blue in healthcare. So when you start to watch TV later tonight, you'll see this, right? You'll see certain industries tend to have different colors and fonts, right? Same thing, black. So you think about all the ones like Chanel, uh, Rolls Royce. There's a ton of logos and or branding messages that's just black and white. It's either a cream background with a black font, or it's a black box like Dior with a white font, right? It just says Dior, right? And it's black. So that kind of comes through in fashion, premium services. So those are things that you can talk about. Country clubs, green. So green kind of blends my world and your world, right? So it's real estate, it's finance, it's sustainability, it's health. So you start to think about like, Regions Bank, Fidelity, a lot of TD Ameritrade. So there's a lot in the finance industry that are green, right? And then there's a lot that's in kind of the real estate that have like kind of a green overlay onto it, right? And then neutral is kind of the new whites, grays, beige. They can, they're communicating the minimalism, the clarity. You can approach us without it being you know, um, too much of a gamble on your side and too intrusive of us, right? So it's just something that's clean there. So now here's the other thing. So that's kind of colors, and you'll start to think about, and then you start thinking about, okay, this was another thing we sat a ton of meetings on. Is it clean sans serif, right? So it's modern, it's approachable, it kind of goes well with the neutrals in the blues, right? So it's trustworthy, it's just, it's easy. And contemporary. Then you get into traditional, right? So those are more like in the blacks and greens, right? So it's traditional fonts, New Times Roman. A lot of those things, you think banking industry, you think, big pharma, you think, some of those kind of, real estate, something that's tangible, right? Monopoly board kind of stuff, right? And then the inconsistent fonts. Now, this is the one thing. And if you don't believe me, when you're surfing around and you fall on a post from someone that you follow, or a website, or you'll see something where it's like 3 different fonts, mix match colors, it almost gives you like tired head from just looking. You hadn't even read it, right? So you're just gone, scroll, pass on all of that. And that's something you got to be careful when you're doing your stuff. Even though it looks cool and you think, oh, this is great, is it conveying the right message? So, and then content and consistency, right? So we always hear about consistency, whether it's in investing, $1 a day will compound, right? Don't just invest when you feel like you have spare change, I'm gonna save up for it, those kind of things. And same thing with like working out, right? You don't have to do brutally long yoga sessions and or weightlifting sessions or stuff one day a week. Just do consistent stuff a long time. So consistency has been proven, right? Why it wins. It kind of keeps everything top of mind. You're not forgotten. You don't want to be so consistent that it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's another one of these posts, or I can't believe it's, this commercial again, because we all kind of get that. But there's got to be enough there where it builds that momentum that you see, right? And then content, it's like what to share. Like a lot of people will sit down and go, I don't know. I got to make a post today to stay consistent, but I don't know what to share. So just even kind of look at this, say, maybe today I'm gonna give someone an insight on something that I saw or I read, right? And you just put your take on it, right? So looks like Warsh is not gonna move rates this quarter. Well, here's what I think, and you kind of put your 2 cents in there, right? So that now you're sharing something kind of makes you look like the expert and you're staying consistent, right? And so then just down here, the green box, it's, your audience may not need you today, but when they do, when they know someone who does, you want to be the first name. So that comes back to that relevancy loop, right? So I'm gonna loop us back to the very beginning when I was talking about driveway decision, right? When you've consistently been there and they may be thinking, well, I don't need to buy a house today. I don't need to buy a house today. 6 months go by that you've been sending a mailer every 3 weeks, or you've been, in their feed, or you've been, sending them a newsletter and email. Then all of a sudden something may happen. Hey, we're going to get transferred, or we want to upgrade, or the kids are out of the house. Now we want to downgrade. I need to call. Who was that person that contacts me all the time? Oh yeah. And it's Mary Jane, and I'll go contact her. Right. So that's what that content and consistency is building is. At some point you are going to be referred to out. Google reviews. This is where we kind of live, like we talked about earlier, right? So, every transaction is a review request, right? And so this is something, and I will give you a real life example. So,
Okay.
our real life example is we just closed. It was a very small deal, but they all count, and we really have a great partnership with the realtor that was, doing the deal. And then we also wanted to help this couple out, right? It was their first time to buy a short-term rental condo. It wasn't a high price point, but there were some complexities to it. And they had a non-traditional income stream. So we really helped them out with some DSCR stuff. We got them a great rate, all of those things, right? So it closed on Friday. And then what I do is I let them enjoy the weekend. I'm not going to bombard them, right? I'm not going to hit them over the head. We did send them our we usually send a closing gift out. And so we did do that. This was a mail away closing. So it wasn't anything local that I could go to because they're investors, but they don't live in the area where they bought the condo. So what I did this morning is I poured my cup of coffee. I knew I was going to do this. So I'll send them, and I'll copy in the loan officer that was involved in it. And I'll say, hey, thank you. Rich and Jolene, we really appreciate you. One of the best things that is a compliment to us is the ability to get referred out, from you based on our service. As you saw, when you read our Google reviews, it's a big thing to us. So I send that little text, right? And then we send it, really quickly. I don't do it so much right after closing, but I'll do it, not 2 weeks from now. I let them enjoy the weekend. They're probably celebrating the close on their first investment property. So I sent it on Monday morning. So that seemed like a good timing for me. There could be debate. I should have sent it earlier, but that's just how we did. And then what we have is we had our marketing team make this cool little link that goes directly into our Google reviews. So there's no searching, looking us up. Is this the right Marsh Lending? All that kind of stuff. Like it's right there. They click it, it goes in, right? And then we already put it on our calendar to follow up with them. So when we see that Google review comes in, we'll look for it and we'll go back and say, hey, thank you so much. Again, we loved working with you. If you ever have any questions, or if you have friends or neighbors that have questions, just call us and we'll help you out. So those are one of the things. And I'll add one more thing to this slide because it's been, a couple of months since we did the slide. But one thing I'll add to this is, and you guys can do it in all of your business too as well, is, and you've probably already heard of it, is instead of typing that text in the 12 seconds or 13 seconds it takes to type the text, do a 20-second video, right? So then you just click video and you say, hey, we really appreciate you. And that even gives it even a higher level of on brand consistency, communicating expertise, confidence, competence, all those things. You just you click the video and you send it to them, and then they see a video pops up and they click it, and then it's you one-to-one, face-to-face. And you're like, hey, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate you. So you can see how those things add up. But this is bigger than what you think. A lot of our stuff, our quick conversions come from Google's. That's for sure.
Want to learn what's working right now in real estate? Then don't miss Monday Night Live, happening every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Each week, we bring you expert training on real estate investing, agent attraction, lead generation, marketing, and AI-powered strategies to help you work smarter and scale faster. You'll also hear inspiring success stories and lessons learned from some of the most successful real estate leaders and investors in the industry. Whether you're a brand new agent, a seasoned investor, or building a high-performing team, there's something valuable for you every single week. Learn, network, grow. Registration is completely free. Simply visit globalinvestoragent.com to reserve your seat for an upcoming Monday Night Live session. Join us this Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and discover strategies you can put to work right away. We can't wait to see you there.
Okay, so actions that strengthen your brand, because now that you've kind of thought about branding, I've thought about typography, I've thought about my font selection, I've thought about my word selection, I've thought about my colors. Okay, I've kind of got all that dialed in. I know I'm consistent across all my channels. Now, what do I need to do to, be strict, be structured, right? And so, and you can read all these. We'll pop through them really quick. But the first one I really want to talk about. So define what you want to be known for, right? Pick a lane and own it. Specificity builds reputation faster than breadth, right? It kind of goes back to the quote unquote full service. We're full service. Okay. That means you're no service, right? Or whatever, right? So one of the things that we talked about on Gary's podcast, and one of the things that I've thought about and just, how do I differentiate myself? How do I differentiate my firm? What do we want to be known for? What do we want to go for? So I don't know how many of you are familiar with like something that's called the BCG, or Boston Consulting Group Matrix, right? It's like a 4-quad set on axes. So just imagine an axis that runs up the left side. And then on that axis, you just write the word complexity. And then imagine an axis that runs along the bottom. And on that, you write dollars, right? Or loan amount, or finance, financial amount of the deal, right? Finances. So we got complexity and we got loan amount, right? Running out of the two axes. Bottom left quadrant, or the closest down, that means it's low complexity and it's low dollars, right? What is in that world? So what is in that world is from our standpoint, and then you can extrapolate it into your world, right? So I'll talk about in my world, and then you can run with it from there. So in our world, that's like, that's a W2, that's two W2 earners. So one's a football coach and the other one is a school teacher, right? And they only have that one W2 job. They have a 401k and a savings account, and they're buying their first house. And their first house is, $250,000 in a cul-de-sac. Now that client is going to be your people that are highly rate and fee sensitive. They want to get the best deal, and that's a race to the bottom, right? There's a lot of people in the swimming pool that can do that deal, right? There's everything from credit unions to online bots to friends and neighbors down the street, right? So that's that deal. Now, if you go the block above it, right? Higher complexity, low dollar amount. That's when you get into the struggle. So the pool changes a little bit, right? So that's people that need down payment assistance. They have no money for a down payment. They're looking, they have a really complex, they're gig workers, but they don't make a ton of money. They show nothing on taxes. So you can't go to a bank. So you got to work through someone like me. But then the loan amount may be less than what my investors are looking for. So we try and help them through a bank. And then, there's a lot of work that's involved in that. And there's a lot of times that you do that. And we have a great success story for something there. But that is a different quad, right? So the bottom is low complexity, easy peasy, low dollar amount. Above it, way more complex, but not much juice worth the squeeze kind of stuff. Not saying that they're not, but I'm just saying that it's just a low dollar amount for the amount of work that one will require. Now, if you run it along the bottom, right? So now we kind of get out bottom corner, right? So bottom corner is low complexity, right? And high dollar amount. So those are the people that have a lot of private bankers. They're like your ultra high net worth. They would work with us if they want some leverage, but more often than not, they've got 8, 9, 10 figures sitting in a Chase account. They have a Chase private banker, and the private banker says, hey, look, we're not going to charge you any points. You have like 17 million in our bank, or you have 53 million in our bank. You want to go buy this house, we'll give it to you 5% loan, go do it. Right. So it's hard for us to compete in that world just because there's barely any underwriting, and they get a lot of carte blanche. So that's low complexity because they have a ton of money in the bank, and it's a high dollar amount. Now you get to the top right-hand corner. So the top right-hand corner is high complexity, right? And high dollar amount. That is really kind of the area that I've carved out for our firm, right? That's the kind of the name that we're getting to be known for. We can do the other stuff, but that's our drill point. That's our target, because we are able to get at those people that, make $12 million a year, but on their tax returns, it's 2 boxes of Twinkies and a can of beer, right? That's really what they're showing, right? And it's legal. I mean, they're fine for showing it that way. Or they have like a complexity, like I tell all my friends. I use this one guy. He's a client of ours. He has 17 auto dealerships. So he has 17 LLCs. He's not taking that to a bank and dumping that on them because they'll never get through underwriting. So we handle those kind of deals, right? Or it may be 3 investors in an LLC, or maybe 1 investor that's a newbie and a personal guarantor that's not involved in the LLC. So they're a little bit more complex in terms of the structure, and they're a high dollar amount. So that's really, so when you're bringing, that's a long answer, but when you're putting your brand together, those are kind of some ideas in your head, right? So you want to build proof at every opportunity. You want to align across all the channels that we're talking about that, but we're really kind of investing in, ourselves and being specific on who we serve, and then how do we do that in a professional, consistent manner. So that I'll stop. That was like probably way more information than you needed, but hopefully you drew some symbolism between my example of what I carve out for our firm and your world.
Yeah, no, that helps a lot. And if you want to, not now, but when we're wrapping things up, why don't we bring up your website and stuff like, because then we can show them your product, the lending, right? And maybe we could point out a couple of things, like the branding and the marketing, things like that, So
Yeah, we can do that. We're in the middle of redoing all of our websites, so we do have a new, really more professional one coming. But yes, we can look at that for sure. Yeah, and then brand audit checklist. This is something that you guys can keep and kind of work through every once in a while. Just make sure that you're clear in your specific, positioning. Your statement is defined either on your LinkedIn and or your socials. Okay, ideal audience. So one of the things that we talked about in that little example I did on the last slide is what we call our ICP, or our ideal client profile. Everybody should have their ideal client profile, and you can have multiple ones. You can have some that overlap, right? So you can have one that's, in this quadrant, and the one right below it, or the one beside it, or the one directly diagonally from it. You can have those, right? And say, I want to go after this and this. And then you just want to make sure that you kind of work through this list. It's consistent messaging, that your mission, your vision, your values are defined. You review all your requests, and everything's built into your workflow, and that you're showing up, in all the key touch points. And then everything that you do, kind of come at it from a professional standpoint, right? Because that is what you're trying to do. And then that's what you're trying to pull in. Like I really strongly advise, especially if you're kind of like an independent contractor, you're a business on your own, have a business one, and then have a family and friends one, right? Have a business one, and then have, the one that you share with your sorority sisters or fraternity brothers, and don't overlap them, right? So, if you're really trying to build a lot of consistency in one area, then make sure that you keep stating that, and you keep posting about that, and you keep showing that. Don't throw in then, you know, goofy cat videos or something like that. Just using it as an example. Just you just want to make sure that what you're doing and what you're showing is consistent along that side, and you don't blend over too much. Now, that being said, I will say some of our higher performing ones is like when we do something that's got a more of a face, right? So you can do a ton that are either AI generated, marketing team generated, designer generated, and or static posts, right? But it's always good to throw in one that's like maybe of your team, right? Hey, our whole team is wishing you, happy 4th of July, right? So we did one of those. And it was like a great post, right? A lot of people interacted with it. They said, hey, it was great to see you guys, da, da, da. So we weren't doing anything that was off brand, but we were just adding some personal to the professional sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pro tip on this one is high performing brands are intentional, right? That's what we've talked about a lot, is be intent, right? And then revisit the checklist quarterly, it could be semi-annual, whatever, to make sure that you're still aligned, and wherever you're kind of off a little bit, then kind of jump back online. Now, this is some areas where we've kind of created this for y'all for tonight. So, so building your personal brand, right? And so, in real estate, you are the brand. You are the brand, right? You're not selling widgets. You're not, you're not putting skateboards in the back of your trunk and you're selling them on the corner, those kind of things, right? You are selling yourself. So buyers and sellers, they hire the agent, not the brokerage too. That's another thing, right? So they have a complete partnership with you, not with the logo on the door that they walk into and or, called from. So, 66% of sellers work with an agent that they were referred to. So that kind of also loops back, right? So that's the loop back to what we talked about earlier is, referrals are key. So from that very first conversation, you're already thinking about, how do I get a referral out of this person? How do I do a good enough job that I get a referral out of this person, right? So, or someone that they've used before, reputation compounds faster than any ad spend. And that is true. You can do a static post of a bunny on the beach. It says Happy Easter, and it could be the cutest thing in the world, and it'd be great. And you did a complete ad boost on it, and you put it in all of these demographics and all these zip codes, and it's still not as good as someone handing your card to their cousin, neighbor, friend, coworker, whatever, and getting a referral that way. So, and then, here's a little bit of reinforcement, claim your niche. And we've talked about that. Saying I'm a full service agent, that already just makes eyes glass over, right? So I had this finance teacher way back in the dark ages when I was in undergrad, and he he used to call us bass on the beach, right? When he would try and write some complicated formula on the board, he'd say, your eyes are open, but you're dead, right? and so you just don't want people to glaze over by just, generic, this is us, vanilla ice cream kind of thing. So you want to specialize, either by specific neighborhood, a price point. We own waterfront. We're the best lakefront people you've ever seen, or we're the best new construction. We have a process that knocks it out of the park, right? And then you just sharpen on that, right? You keep saying, so like here, I help first-time home buyers or move up sellers or investors in this lakefront market, achieve these great closings through whatever it is, my expertise, right? And then know your sphere, right? So that's another thing, doing like what you're doing right now. Continually learn a little bit about, subscribe to some newsletters to some people who really make sense to you. Catch that. If you know that there's going to be a market trend blurb when you drink coffee at 7 a.m. on, morning markets or something like that, hey, I saw where rates ticked up like today, so I just want to let you know, let's go ahead and get this offer in, right? Or, hey, I saw rates came down. Now's a good time to you've been waiting on that house, jump in, right? So those are some things.
Mhm.
And then, pro tip, if you're for sale sign, business card, Instagram, bio, they all say something different. We talked about this earlier. The prospects kind of notice that, right? They kind of know, hey, you gave me this card, but it doesn't look anything like, your website or this or that. So you want to make sure you have that trust.
Mhm.
All right. So visibility that wins listings, right? So professional photography. I think a lot of people already know that, but what's great is with the advent of AI and headshot apps and chat and Claude and everything else, man, you can do just about anything. I've seen more Tony Romo and Tiger Woods DUI driving in a car with, a keg of beer than in 5 minutes after it happened than you would believe. I mean, and they look real. So just that professional photography, and then just have that consistent content cadence that we talked about. Right, here's a local market update. I know you guys get them, but they're not everybody produces them. Right, not everybody says, hey, our team had 12 closings last month, or hey, in this neighborhood, the inventory went down by 50% because there were 7 closings last month. This is a hot neighborhood, right? Or, hey, these 4 houses just came on the market. So those are some things that you can, that you can do. There's a lot of stuff around just listed and just sold posts, right? You get the pundits on both sides saying, do it, don't do it. Do it, don't do it, right? It cheapens your brand. It strengthens your brand. I look at it as if you do it, do it. If you don't do
Mhm.
it, don't just kind of dabble in it, right? It kind of goes back to that what the headline is, consistent content cadence. If you're listing a lot of properties, then show off and say that I'm listing these because guess what? When you walk into that listing appointment, you're against a dozen other realtors who also want that listing appointment. And if they look
Mhm.
on your posts and they see on your homepage or your website or whatever that you've listed, half the neighborhood, be proud of that. And then there's a reason why now you're the expert, right? And then again, reviews on every closing. So we talked about that. That's something that you guys should always push for. I know it sounds like a pain in the ass or anything, but I'm telling you, if you just get consistent with it and you make sure that you do it and you look forward to doing it, then it's really great. So, um,
Mhm.
all right, this is a big one. I don't know how many of you know AEO, but it's a new thing that's kind of out, right? It's called
Mm.
answer engine optimization. So it is the new SEO, right? So it rewards sites that teach. So Gary, you were talking about our website. So our
Mhm.
website was really good at SEO. Our website was concise, it was clear, and it was along those terms. We're in the method or we're in the process right now of rewriting our entire website, changing the
Mm.
imagery, the fonts, the colors, everything to get at this because this is the new SEO. It's answer engine optimization. So basically, what it is, what it says, it rewards sites that teach, not ones that sell. And so there was in the beginning, websites were a lot more
Mhm.
information. Then they become super salesy because if everybody remembers, I need SEO and I need a sales funnel. I need everything coming in the top end. So I have to have a hook. I got to have like some sort of giveaway, or I've got to have some sort of percent off if you answer all my questions and then you buy tennis shoes from me at the end. Our website will give you 10% off, all of those things, right? Um, and so a lot of it was SEO based, and now, and one of the reasons why one of our websites is delayed is because the person who built our website, she's inundated with all these people trying to get at this AEO or the AI search optimization. So what
Mhm.
you want to do is you want to build at least a little bit of FAQ into every page because think about it. When you ask Chat GPT, you're not typing in just a website and hitting enter. You're not typing in marshlending.com, go, right? You're typing in what is the best, mortgage company or the highest rated with the best Google reviews. We're trying to buy a non-warrantable condo on 38 in Florida, go, right? And so I got to make sure I'm answering those kind of questions or at least having that
Mhm.
capability, right? So like just read the first one. So you have like 5 or 8 kind of real interactions between buyer and seller. Was the average closing cost in your city, or what is, you know, what is what is the amount of days it takes to close on an FHA loan or something like that, right? So just you want to build it in there, and you have such higher leaps and bounds than the people that don't have that kind of stuff. You want to lead everything with a direct answer. So this is another big one. So open every page or post with a 40 to 60 word direct answer before the details. That short block is exactly what AI engines extract and quote back to the user. So when you type in, I need the best non-warrantable condo DSCR loan on 30A, and then it starts showing the little 3 or 4 stars going around in a circle and the dots and all that. It's looking for this. And guess what? When it comes back, it's not what Mr. and Mrs. ChatGPT said. It's what you said, right? So it found your website, it found the answer, and it's spitting back exactly what you're doing. So that's how the AEO works. And then you want to keep your info consistent everywhere. And then you want to publish, local data on a schedule. So freshness matters to AI models. Like if something is stale, it knows it, right? And so the more that you kind of refresh, like what we talked about, hey, we're in the Woodland neighborhood, and the Woodland neighborhood next to Clear Lake is has 25% more inventory on it this month. Right. Okay. So then do the same analysis next month and say, hey, the Woodland neighborhood in Clear Lake has now 27% more inventory than it did this time last year or last month. Right. And so it kind of keeps you fresh. I know it seems like, oh my gosh, and on top of everything else I got to do this too, but it does help. And so those are hyperlocal. This is another big thing. And I've seen this, and I have a real world example. If we have like 2 seconds, I can jump through it. So I've seen this on a personal level where one of our relatives was involved with an urgent care center that was regionally based, but they were really good at hyper local events. They went to every Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting. They did golf events. They had a partnership with the local NHL team and the local college's football team. And so they were down on the sideline, they were throwing footballs, they were doing all these things, right? And so it started to become, kind of a thing to see them where they were, right? And guess what? HCA's urgent care group, Care Now, right, bought that company, right? Just based on how hyper local they were, because the kind of the headquarter office was nearby and saw how much they were kind of cutting into their market share, or their market, so it really does work, and this is one of the things that my CMO tells me all the time. If you market to everyone, you market to no one. I know everybody's kind of heard that before, but like if you say Dallas Realtor, that's generic and forgettable. The Lakewood Bungalow Specialist, right? Now they're starting to remember you, right? Especially if they live in Lakewood, right? So those are some things. So, you want to farm a neighborhood, not a city. You want to make sure that you're kind of dialed in. If you can get to 200 to 1,000 homes in one neighborhood or a couple of zip codes, you're gonna kill it. And guess what? You'll start to get well known in those tangent or adjacent neighborhoods as well, right? It just kind of spreads itself. But if you start out, hey, I'm going to cover this, I'm going to be 50-mile famous instead of 5-mile famous. Start at 5 and you'll get to 50 a lot easier than the other way around. Trust me. And then, hyper local content wins humans and AI, right? So, there's a lot of things that you can put out there that AI picks up on, right? So whatever that local content is, like there's new developments. Hey, there's a new bridge going in, or, hey, there's a new shopping center that's going to have, this new, grocery store in it, or whatever, those kind of things. Just anything you can be relevant on and beat your team, because there's a lot of people that aren't doing this. So if you do a little bit of it, you're going to be ahead of everybody else.
Mhm.
Specific beats broad. I think we've talked about that a lot. Realtor's a category. No, I'm the agent who sold 12 houses on Maple Street. Bam, right? That hits.
Mhm.
That now, guess what? Every other house on Maple Street, when they list, they're listing with you. So that's something that's
Mhm.
um, switch the script, stop thinking about marketing, start thinking education, certain property types, certain regional markets. You want to own the data, you want to nuance them, you want to make sure that you're engaging with them, and then work with someone, right? So one of the things that we did that really helped out some of our our referral partners in the real estate world was we got on camera just like this, and we did a panel, and we said, and they would ask us questions. Hey, for our clients that want to know, what is a DSCR, we explain that. What is jumbo versus super jumbo? What is a first time buyer program? What's a 1031 exchange? And we did it in kind of clean language, right? We talked about ways to educate. So guess what? Now you're showing that you're the expert. You're showing good educational content to everybody who follows you already, and you can make it relevant to your little neighborhood. So you can go hyper local, hyper great educational content, and you really didn't have to do much except for be the MC or the moderator. You just bring on a referral partner, and guess what? That referral partner will help you a lot of times split the cost on the video, or do special things for you in return, in terms of hey, yeah, let's cross pollinate this. I'll put this on our YouTube channel to point back to your YouTube channel, or I'll do like a series of posts that refer them to you, right? So they can watch this video, and a lot of those things. So there, and it's a way for you to produce like a week's worth of content on a hyper local topic, and
Mhm.
it's just an easy way to do it. So, and then pro tip: every question a client asks you in person is a piece of content waiting to be recorded, right? So you build your own library, and then now AEO, like we talked about, goes and looks for that on either your website, if you have a press page, or your YouTube channel, or your socials, and they're looking for that video, right? So like, let's say you explain something like down payment percentages, right? Why one versus another, or what does it take to get as a first time home buyer? Well, then next time someone types in how much you have to put down on a first time, your video comes up to the top. Guess who they're calling? They're calling.
Mhm.
So those are some things. Find your brand voice, and therefore earn authority. Let's kind of look at these percentages. So 12,000% more shares than text and image posts combined, right? So video is the most shared format on social media. And that kind of
Mhm.
gets back to, I could text you, hey, thanks for closing with our firm, and please leave us a Google review. I can just do a quick video and send it to you, right? And then 91% of businesses now use video as their core marketing tool. You do see that a lot. There's a lot of people that use YouTube only, way more than they do X, Twitter, or Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And if you notice, LinkedIn is now video king. It's starting to get video heavy. So everything that you do through LinkedIn, it's going back to video. So, and then 73% of consumers say that they prefer short form video over anything, right? So no one they'd rather see me say in 30 seconds what's a DSCR loan than them having
Mhm.
through a white paper of me sending them to them. This is what a DSCR loan is, right? So that doesn't make sense. So, you know, and I would say that one of the things I'm pushing on our marketing team on the back half of this year, as we kind of leverage and look into first quarter next year, is how do we do more video? How can we make it shorter? How can we make it more impactful? How can we, get more credibility out of the videos that we do? So those are the things, right? So, um, and then here's another thing. Why does it help build your business, right? So, there's a lot of studies that say listings with video generate 400% more inquiries than without it, right? You get 4 times more of the income because all the inquiries. You're getting 67% more engagement on your Instagram reels because they are better than a static image post, right? Get on there and tell someone, hey, happy 4th of July from, our team to yours, right? And as opposed to just like, fireworks going off, happy 4th of July. And then you get a lot more appointments, right? So agents who put out at least 15% of their budget behind video get 50% more listing appointments. So that's a big thing. And so let's kind of dial in on this opportunity gap here. So 38% of the agents that use videos in their marketing at all, right? And only 9% make listing specific videos. So if you are transitioning more from a buyer agent to a selling agent or a listing agent, you can whip 91% of the market or your competitive force by just making listing specific videos. All right, go back to that thing like, hey, I closed 12 houses on Maple Street. Okay, make a video about that. Took you not very long. You put your graphics on there, put your contact me on there, and then you send it out, right? So, and then they also see 1% monthly follower growth. So that's really kind of high. There's not a lot of people that see double-digit follower growth or a lot of followers, but there's a lot of contacts made from non-followers, if that makes sense, right? So they may not follow you as a specific, I clicked follow on your thing, but I see you in my feed all the time. I like your content, and I've, shared your video with friends and family or as a referral, or it kept, hit the save button and I saved it for me for later when I want to look at it again. So, what to actually do. So you want to post 2 to 4 short videos per week, and then it kind of gives you a list of like, answer a question, give a tip, have a, show a listing, film every new listing walkthrough, even if it's only 30 seconds on your phone, right? So, that's a little better than just saying just listed, right? And then a picture of the front door, right? So those are some good things there. Post smarter. I know you guys have probably seen a lot of this, but we want to kind of put it right out in front of you again. Tuesday, Thursday, 9 to 12. Why? Everybody's busy on Mondays all the way up through the night, like tonight, right? And then on Fridays, a lot of people have got tired head and they're ready to check out, right? So Tuesday through Thursday, 9 to 12. Why is that big? Because a lot of people set appointments in the afternoon, right? So they're not checking their phone because they're busy with appointments, they're making calls, they're having to, follow up on client paperwork, that kind of stuff. But in the morning time, they have their coffee, they're trying to get their day started. So that's a good time. 3 to 5 per week. Well, if you hit Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 a.m., you could do 9, 10, 11, right? Tuesday at 9, Wednesday at 10, Thursday at 11. That covers that. And then your call to action, right? So 150% higher, for them to click to you, DM me for a private showing. Why? Because I sold 12 houses on Maple Lane, right? So those are those things, right? And then it's trust is built on repetition. So you've heard me through this whole presentation kind of do loop backs to things that we talked about earlier, right? It's just all on repetition. Not just one viral post, you show up and kind of, make some effort to where the AEO or the algorithms reward you for that. Right. Mm-hmm. And then now here's a little brand check for you guys. Current professional headshot. It's good to have the same one and or a variation of the same one on all of them. Right. One sentence positioning, your Google profile be filled out and active. So make sure you do all the things that give you the fighting chance, because the more that you fill out on that and the better your Google reviews are, the higher you're going to rank on the thing. Have 5 recent reviews visible on Google and or Zillow. Like we loop them into our web team has them just running across the bottom of our homepage in our new website. So, and then social bios and websites say the same thing, right? So if you are the premier listing agent for Maple Avenue, then make sure it says it on all things, right? And then you want to just revisit it and make sure that everything makes sense, right? and you can always make changes. That was kind of a lot of information. This is where, these are some things for us. So, I got my headshot, I got my name, contact me, call to action, green and blue. So I'm hitting those colors that I need. I got a little bit of serif on my fonts because we are, and in our logo, because we are a financial institution or a financial firm. So we want to make sure that, it's not bubble letters or something like that. And then it kind of lists, specifically what we do. So that's kind of in a nutshell, what we try and convey. We have the same logo on everything. We have same variations of the logo. So it's either stacked, it's all in one line. It may be just the logo icon itself, but we make sure there's consistency there. So, and then when I send this out to you guys, there's the sources and references for a lot of the things. So that was a lot of information. And every time I end a presentation or something, I always say the same thing, right? So you remember about 10% of what you read, you remember about 7% of what I've said at all tonight, but you remember 100% of how I made you feel, right? And so that's what you think about when you have these conversations with people. I've said some stuff. It's a lot of information, may have glossed over your head. You may have given up halfway through the presentation, but if we can invoke some sort of emotional, behavioral connection between the two of us, and I made you feel a certain way about, hey, I don't want to hear about branding ever again, or hey, that really makes some sense. I'm going to look at my branding this weekend and kind of, does it need to have a little freshen up? Even if I just freshen up 2 things, my Instagram and my bio and my LinkedIn bio. Well, there's something, right? And that's going to trigger you because you just put new information out there, right? And it's a way for you to connect back to your followers, your community, your clientele, those kind of things. Or even if you just took of something, what you learned today, just those statistics, stick it on a post and stick it out there. We've created some content, right? So those are kind of the things. Is there any questions on this? If not, I'll stop sharing and then I'll let Gary take back over.
Yeah. Any questions, guys? Whether it's on the content or also on the lending that Aaron does. And Aaron, where can you, are you able to lend in all 50 states, or there's any states you don't lend in, or?
Yeah, there are some ones that we don't lend in. One is either the state makes it kind of difficult for that, right? New York's one of them. There's some special licensing required in some other ones, but I can send you guys out a map of all the ones that we lend in from commercial and investment property. In Texas, Alabama, and Florida, we can handle everything.
Awesome. So so tonight, those slides, there was a lot of content. And the thing I like about it is a lot of it was like checklist formatted. So it's easy for people to consume and digest. And I knew a lot of these guys need that kind of stuff. Is that what you're sending? Or
I'll send you the playbook in PDF form, and then you can disseminate it however you like. You can send a couple of different slides that make the most sense, or you can send the whole thing or whatever. I'm okay with it.
Okay. Now, for the folks that are interested in the lending, your lending business,
sure,
just go to marshlending.com. Is that the best thing to do?
Yeah, that, and if you have investors that want to learn more about investment, just the whole world of short-term rentals, property management, picking the right realtor, picking the right property. We did a whole video series of that, and it's on YouTube. And so you can watch the long one, which is about 18 minutes, and it's all Q&A panel format, like a podcast. Or you can just watch one. They're all named, so you can watch the 2 to 3 minutes on one that, like, someone, how to pick the ideal property, right? And so we had one of the property managers and an investor who's a good client of ours, talk about, heads and beds, amenities, proximity, all of those kind of things. And it's all broken down for you. So on YouTube it's at Marsh Lending. There's a lot of that information, or you can, contact us directly or go to our website, Marsh Lending, and our new website will be coming up shortly. So as we get it all AEO ready.
Yeah, it's funny. It got me now thinking about the colors on mine, because when we created it, the original logo that goes way back to like 2008 or
Mhm.
nine, when
Mhm.
we Wind Realty Advisors. It was basically a mountain scene, like graphic mountain, not an actual photograph, that we could turn upside down for W for wind, but also in other ways we could use it, the peaks going up, to sort of convey the message of, you're climbing to the top. But the colors were more, it was like an off red and an off blue, basically, red, white, blue. And I forget what it conveyed back then, but one of them was calm, the other one was
Right.
taking action. I thought, well, that's
Urgency.
kind of
Yeah.
yeah, but we've had it ever since. Sometimes we use a black and white version. We've changed it around, but I actually was when you first brought up the slide that had the colors, my eyes were instantly drawn to the blue and the green. You know,
Right.
if you think about what we're doing in the world of people making money, those were the two that had the most to do with that. I mean,
Right.
luxury, you could make that claim too, but some of us do sell luxury homes, but really our bread and butter is you know the blue and the green, I think.
Yeah. And it all, once you start to see it, and again, watch it on TV, you'll see like Blue Cross Blue Shield pop up. Okay, that's healthcare.
Mhm.
It's calling, it's trusted. It's a trust mark, right? And then you'll see, TD Ameritrade or Fidelity will pop up, and it's a green pyramid or something, and so then, or Fisher Investments, right? So you see the guy,
Exactly.
they're all wearing green ties, right? Why are they doing
Fidelity,
it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Fidelity, Vanguard, yeah. Uh,
So
yeah.
yeah, if you guys have any questions about financing or any deals that we've done recently or anything like that. Oh yeah, Sasha has a question.
Sasha, you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. This was very informative. I will ask a question because you were really speaking to me about niching down and not trying to do everything. Like you
Okay.
said, we have heard if you're marketing everyone, you're marketing no one. But what do you do when you really have a lot of licenses and skills? And even though you're not trying to do them all, sometimes somebody will ask you a question. And you're like, oh, I want to talk about these taxes, or I want to talk about this loan product, or I want to talk about investing. I want to talk about this new construction. Like, how do you let people know that you help everybody while staying true to your niche and not sounding all over the place? Because that's what really stifles my content.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but you could like Chat GPT, just give me a 3-paragraph summary of it. There's a book called Blue Ocean, Red Ocean. I don't know if you've heard of that, right? So Red Ocean, Blue Ocean strategies, right? So of all the things that you have licenses for and all the things that you can do, you can subtly let that.
Thank you for watching Monday Night Live. Consider subscribing. Agents, want to learn more? Schedule a call with Gary using the link in the description.